Hello, hello, hello. How's my mic sounding? Actually, I'm going to switch over to this view. That's better. I got a new webcam, which you may have seen in my latest video. So this is the first time I'm really testing it out with a live stream. So we'll see how it goes. Which you may have seen in my... Looks all right. How am I sounding? How's the audio? A little quiet. Okay. Couldn't remedy that. I think I just need to speak into the mic. Greetings from Chile. Thank you, Kushluk. Greetings from the United States. How are things going in Chile? Audio's a little crackly. Let me look into that. From the United States. How are things going in Chile? I don't know. Small crackle sound. Might just be peaking. In which case I need to turn it down. I don't know. I've been trying to get into the routine of doing live streams more frequently. I've done at least like 1 or 2 a month for the past couple months. I don't really have anything in particular to talk about in this stream. I just figured I was going to chill, talk to anyone who wants to hang out in the chat. I might play a video game. I don't know. I have a few I've been meaning to play, so yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Kushluk says, coronavirus never ends, so there is a lockdown on weekends. That sucks. Really sucks. Yeah. Got the same problem here, so. Making deep dish pizza, says Loopy Fists. Yeah, good luck. I don't really know what that entails. I gotta say, I mean, this might be controversial coming from someone who is let's just say a Chicagoland native. Not a huge fan of deep dish. I actually think there are other more preferable styles of pizza. I actually like, New York style better than deep dish. Deep dish is just such an indulgence, and you can only do it every once in a while, or you're going to end up, stuffing yourself. I can do deep dish maybe like once every 5 years, and then I've reached my quota. Yeah, pizza hot takes. If you guys were local, I would give you some hot pizza tips about where the good pizza is, but yeah. Bubble Boy, not a fan of deep dish. Yeah. Yeah, that, above all else, that is the take that's going to get me canceled, isn't it? Paige says, some guy looked at pizza and said, how can I eat this with a straw, and invented deep dish pizza. Yeah. Yeah, it is an extremely indulgent style of pizza. What else can I say? Thoughts on pineapple as a topping? Not a fan. Not a big fan. I mean, I'm just a pepperoni guy. I kind of... I'm not a huge fan of putting a lot of shit on the pizza. My wife likes olives on the pizza. That just destroys a perfectly good pizza, in my opinion.
Excuse me?
It's not good. And fortunately, she doesn't have a platform to espouse her pro-olive views, her sickening pro-olive views.
I can interrupt you.
Yes, I'm going to censor her. Aria H, missing Petscop and ARG content. Any recs to check out? Well, I just covered an ARG. I think it's an ARG called Hiding in My Home. So I would recommend you check that out and then watch my video on it. Yeah. Nice self-plug there. Aside from that, I am open to suggestions if anyone has anything they might be interested in seeing me cover. You know, I'm always looking for new stuff to cover. So I have a few things in the works right now. But actually, I have several topics that I am planning on doing future videos on. So far, none of them are ARGs. One of them is a video game, and one of them is more of like a... it's going to be more of like a socio-political topic, which I think maybe kind of along the lines of my my analysis of the doomer phenomenon. So I'm excited about that. I always kind of try to branch out a little bit and cover things other than, you know, horror movies and ARGs. I try not to get like pinned down to one thing, one niche, because I think that's a good way to like exhaust my like creative drive. I get really burned out on if I cover like one type of subject. Someone says maybe Catastrophe Crow, maybe. So I've done several live streams on that. If you haven't seen those yet, I have mixed feelings about Crow 64 or Catastrophe Crow. But yeah, I've been over that. I'm not sure how much there is there to analyze, if I'm being completely honest. But I could be wrong. I'm always open to being wrong. If someone has, you know, their own angle on that, I'd be open to hearing about it. Maggie Port, why are ARGs plagued with behind-the-scenes drama? That's a good question. I think, in part, it speaks to the atomized nature of society in late capitalism. I think we've kind of been conditioned to compete with one another for attention. So that is part of the hyper atomization that is occurring in our present moment. there's a sense in which any kind of collaborative project, it inherently entails some kind of tension, because you have a team of people, a team of individuals with their own vision for what they want to do and their own kind of approach. So, a collaborative project just in kind of entails at least some tension. I would be surprised if there is none. The team just works like a totally cohesive Borg collective, and they're all just on the same page about everything. Maybe that happens. I don't know, but when you combine the more variables, so if you have a team of people and they all kind of get their own say on how the project is run, you're going to have a formula for clashing heads there. So when you add that to the fact that we're all hyper atomized, it's a formula for disaster. And frankly, it's kind of a miracle when an ARG is successful in some regard. So that would be my take on why ARGs. There's some degree of drama behind the scenes. Of course, I'm not involved in these projects, and I can't speak to any I can't speak to anything specifically, right? I don't know what's going on behind the scenes of these productions, but I can sort of generalize and to the best of my abilities. Tarkov, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your name, but Tarkov says the issue with Crow is that it seems like a straight one-to-one art piece, which is cool, but it seems to lack depth as of now. It's just so clear in what it is and what it does. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out a diplomatic way to say this. It does. I don't know if I would say it lacks depth. But as someone who kind of tries to find the socio-political angle of works of art, it's not something that seems to lend itself towards that, and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't have a sense of entitlement enough of a sense of entitlement to think that everyone should make things geared towards my specific interests. Having said that, after kind of going over the details of Crow 64, there was a point at which I just sort of found it was difficult to find an entry point into a good, solid analysis video where I could do some of this, some little footnotes there, I don't know. I'm open to being wrong on that. We'll see where it goes. Tarkovsky like the director and noir like film noir. Oh, okay. That makes sense. I'm a dingus. Oh, we got a pretty pretty decent amount of concurrent viewers right now for the when you consider the fact that I'm not really covering anything specifically. Like, I don't know. Normally, I'm kind of like, I think if I just come on here and bullshit with people, it's like, I don't know. I don't expect any more than like 10 people to care. Newt says, your videos are great. My ADHD brain can't follow ARG stuff too well. So watching your vids, chatting about them really helps. That's nice. Thank you. I'm glad you I'm glad you find my videos helpful, and I really have been trying to make them a bit more digestible. It's kind of tricky, right? Because I don't want to condescend to my audience, but I also don't want to talk over their heads. I don't know. I've gotten a lot of I've gotten a few comments in the past saying like, "Hey, I kind of like have a hard time following what the fuck you're saying," which I think has less to do with my I don't know, word choice, my lexicon, if you will, and more to do with maybe like my writing style is a little bit too wordy. So I've been trying to be conscientious of that as of late. And yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of thinking maybe people seeing me on camera might help with that as well. You know, because a lot of, I don't know, communication can be nonverbal as well. So, you know, using hand gestures and facial expressions also helps communicate what I'm trying to get across. So that was why that's why I've kind of shifted to doing on camera with my latest video. And it's just kind of, it's an experiment and we'll see where it goes, you know? Chromium Man, not to be that guy on my first time here, but being an autistic person who usually finds myself with an ARG special interest, you really put a smile on my face more often than not. That's really nice. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. It's really encouraging. Charles Harrison, recommend Tenet. I haven't seen Tenet. Yeah, I don't. I'll probably watch it at some point. I don't know, but I can't recommend it because I haven't seen it. My wife is trying to get my attention. She's not careful. I'm gonna drag her over here.
No.
We love the footnote. Yes, we love the footnote sound, don't we, folks? We love it. We love it. Yeah, RIP to the greatest poster of all time. How do people feel about Trump getting banned from Twitter? I think it's hilarious. I think if I were writing a movie based on the events of like what's happening right now, like a fictional movie, everything that has happened thus far in like 2021 has been like too heavy-handed and like too on the nose. It's like insane. I don't know. Bubble Boy, is Christopher Nolan a smart dumb guy or a dumb smart guy? uh you know, I there was a phase in my life in which I really enjoyed Christopher Nolan films. I think maybe he's just one of those guys that's like kind of maybe like an entry point for people to get into film in general. Kind of like and then you know, you're a big Christopher Nolan guy for a while, but at some point, if you remain like a film aficionado, you kind of move past Nolan and go on to, I mean, in my opinion, you go on to better directors. Your cool gay Aunt Ellie says, your video on Doomers has really helped me out during these hard and stressful times. That's nice to hear. Thank you. Yeah. It's tough. I'm trying to like go back to my headspace when I wrote the script for that video, and this past year has been such a fucking disaster. I don't even like remember writing it, to be honest with you. But I'm glad you found it. Had to burp. I'm glad you found it helpful, and I'm trying to think of other topics that are sort of related to that I could cover, if that makes sense. So that's, I don't know, that's something that's been on my mind. Bubble Boy says, you phrasing it like that gave me a thought. Christopher Nolan is the Kevin Smith of smart films. I think that's a very astute way of putting it, Bubble Boy, because yeah, Kevin Smith is kind of a director like that too. He's kind of like if you're getting into like indie films, you see Clerks, right? And then you might get on the Kevin Smith train, but yeah, he's like the type of director that you definitely move past at some point, and you might look back and be like, Kevin Smith is kind of, you know, how quaint. It was very quaint of me to be a big fan of Kevin Smith at that point in my life. Like I was a big Kevin Smith fan when I was like maybe like 14, you know, as you do as a young lad. Drenful says, yeah, same here, not remembering. Can't remember much of last summer due to the chaos. It's like, yeah, I don't know. It's like a collective trauma. It's like a collective traumatic experience here. There's probably some important sociology work to be done on this topic. DL says, get off the Kevin Smith train before Jersey Girl. I've seen that movie at some point. I don't remember it. I don't remember anything about it other than that Ben Affleck is in it. And I think George Carlin is in it. That's why I remember. I love George Carlin. I won't say a bad thing about him. Maggie Port, Kevin Smith is just living his best life right now. Don't hate. You know what? I'm as far with respect to Kevin Smith the person, seems like a perfectly fine fella. He seems like a very nice person. I'm talking about his filmography, and this is just my 2 cents. I'm just some dude, so don't take my opinion too seriously on that. Yeah. Maggie Port, he defied death and he's decided he's going to smoke weed and have a good time because it's all extra time now. I fully get that. You know, that makes a lot of sense to me, and I was very disheartened to hear about his health situation, and I'm so glad he's doing better. So that's not, you know, like I said, with respect to Kevin Smith the person, I don't really have anything bad to say, other than maybe his movies, like his early movies, are a little bit homophobic. But I kind of think he's like, it seems like he's evolved past that type of humor. But I don't know. Christopher says, I read a post from a therapist that said an important way to stave off depression is to remember as many good things that happened during a quote unquote blank spot in your memory. Yeah. That's a good tip. It's kind of tough this past year just because we've been there's been a kind of, I mean, I personally have been lucky enough to be able to work from home this whole time. So, I can't really complain all that much, but there's been a kind of general homogenous experience here in my 1-bedroom apartment. So it's hard to sort of like distinguish between, was that like last weekend or the weekend before last? Like time is a flat circle. That's what it feels like right now. We live inside a locked box. That sounded more like Clinton than it did McConaughey. I support QAnon. What if Bill Clinton came out as a QAnon truther? My wife, she was behind everything. Newt says, are you into tabletop RPGs? I am not. Not out of a lack of interest. I just haven't really had much of an opportunity to participate in that kind of thing. Yeah. You know, my mom wouldn't even let me wear black t-shirts when I was a teenager because she thought it was of the devil. So I don't think she would have let me play D&D. I probably could have slipped it past her if I was really attached to the idea. But, you know, that sort of satanic thing was not acceptable in my home. Although, you know, I played Doom, so it's not exactly... She wasn't very consistent. Let's just put it that way. Someone says, y'all, I just won a hearing thing where my state's unemployment department wanted to take back $2,200 in, I guess, vacation time for me, and I got a W. congratulations. That sounds good, right? You won the hearing. Excellent. Yeah, that's the thing. I think Bill Clinton is actually Q. I think he's been Q this whole time. I'm going to get this. This stream's going to get taken down if I keep talking about that. Tyler Kurth says, I've been working from home for the most part as well. I was able to handle it, but then the commercials about staying at home started, and I couldn't deal with them. Same. I fucking hate those commercials. I understand they have to, like, advertisers have to figure out a way to acknowledge the conundrum we find ourselves in right now in order to relate to people, but it is like, I'm just so sick of it at this point. I mean, fuck commercials in general. Oh, I shouldn't say that too loud because I get a few $100 in ad revenue every month. Kushluck, will the U.S. stabilize or continue to destabilize? Well, now we're getting into some spicy... this is a spicy subject. If I had to guess, under Biden, there will be the illusion of stabilization. But I think behind the scenes, and with respect to everyday working conditions for most Americans, things are going to continue to destabilize because the general trends we've been seeing in terms of just like the material conditions in which people find themselves is, you know, healthcare costs are skyrocketing. I don't see Biden doing anything all that effectual on that to you know, really what's required right now is Medicare for all. So anything short of that is not going to temper, it's not going to stabilize the skyrocketing healthcare costs. So your average everyday Americans are taking a hit, a major hit on that. You know, education costs have been skyrocketing, and it doesn't really seem like anybody knows why. Administrative bloat seems to be a pretty sizable factor. So it's harder for it's harder for everyday Americans to get a college education, and when they do get a college education, they are left in they're left in gobs of debt. So that is a major strain on the economy. Now, I have heard that Biden is kind of floating the idea of canceling some amount of student debt. I mean, if we can get that done, that would be incredibly helpful, but it's you know, from what I've been hearing, the figures that have been floating around, and based on the way Biden has been kind of posturing, it seems like maybe if we get $10,000 of student debt canceled, of federal student loans specifically, that's probably the best we can hope for at this point, based on how the Biden administration is approaching the economy. I'd be surprised if we get more than that. I'd be kind of surprised if we get that, actually, to be frank. But that would still, it would be a it would serve as a stimulus to the economy, because if college graduates don't have that, you know, that extra that student loan payment they have to make every month, that's disposable income, and they can spend that on, they can put that back into the economy. So yeah, so we have two fronts there. We have healthcare costs, we have education costs are skyrocketing. The property values, real estate, is another area that people need to pay attention to, because as far as I can tell, based on my research, real estate property values are like super high right now, which is a little bit counterintuitive, because we have a major, we have a pandemic going on that's coinciding with a major economic crisis, which has led to an explosion in unemployment. And so it's a little bit counterintuitive that property values are kind of remaining at this very high level. You would expect to see, in a vacuum, these factors should lead to they should lead to housing costs going down, at least to some degree, but they're not. And I guess maybe part of the reason why they're not is because at the upper level of income distribution, let's say the top 10%, maybe even the top 1%, there's a lot of liquidity. They're very cash heavy, and they can swoop in and buy up property, and I think that's what's going on right now, and it's keeping real estate values sort of artificially high. Or maybe artificial isn't the right term, but it's keeping property values at this very high rate at a time when we have very low supply in housing. So that's a problem, because it's preventing people who aren't wealthy or aren't affluent. It's preventing them from being able to afford a house right now. So you have all of these factors that are just decimating the working class in this country. I saw that Biden is in favor of raising the national minimum wage to $15. That would certainly be great if he could get that done. But you have to keep in mind, that's like what he's floating right now as that's his first offer. That's his proposal. So you have to expect that this is like, when you're in a negotiation, you don't ask for what you want. You ask for more than what you want. So if Biden is operating on that basis, it's a pretty solid bet that we're actually not going to get $15 minimum wage. We'll probably get something less than that. So that was my long way of saying I would be surprised if things stabilize in the United States. If I had to guess, things are only going to, not to sound like a negative Nelly, but things are going to increasingly destabilize as China becomes a bigger player. At some point, they might overtake us as the prime mover of the global economy. I don't know. I don't know when that could happen. It could be like 10 years from now. It could be like 50 years from now. So don't ask me. But, if I had to guess, That's what I think is happening right now, and I don't see. Unfortunately, I don't see a strong enough working class movement in this country to really stave off any of these bad effects. So, you know, we better hope that Marx's immiseration thesis is correct, because if it isn't, we're just kind of screwed. John UP says, yes, can't wait for that all power to China. Yeah, I'm not a fan, personally. You know, I'm not one of these leftists who is in favor of China as far as, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't touch that one, but I don't think, China is a state capitalist government, a state capitalist regime. You know, and they operate under the header of quote unquote communism. But if you look at how they operate, it's not super different than, you know, any other capitalist country. The workers are exploited there. You might even say hyper exploited. And I would say your average worker probably doesn't really have all that much say in their everyday lives. John UP says, well, China hasn't destroyed democracy in my country like twice. Well, I don't know where you live, so what country do you live in? I'm not familiar with your situation, but I do know that China has its hand is trying to get its increasingly involved in Africa. So they have their own imperial designs, and you know, I think it would be a specious claim to say that they operate any more or less ethically than the United States. I think that remains to be seen as they increasingly become a major player in the global economy. From what I understand, they don't have very many ports, so they are outgunned in that respect. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. It's my hot take about China. Hopefully I won't get a bunch of fucking tankies invading the stream. Kushluk says the U.S. couped Allende. Generally, people in Latin America have feelings. Yeah. Right. The United States is not is not a force for good. Not even close. So let's dispel with that myth. The myth of American exceptionalism is total bullshit. And this whole thing with the Capitol, chickens coming home to roost. That's what I gotta say. And what did Malcolm X say about chickens coming home to roost? Chickens coming home to roost never made me mad. In fact, it makes me glad. And that's what he said about it. I'm not necessarily endorsing that comment, but that's what Malcolm X had to say about chickens coming home to roost. I think obviously what happened at the Capitol is in part it is a reaction, or it is a sort of a movement that Trump that has been rooted in Trump as a sort of like cult leader. So you can look at it from that perspective. Um, and by no means is violence condoned on my stream. And obviously these people are the political character of them in large part is right-wing reactionary. So as a leftist, it's hard for me to sign on to anything that is has that sort of political character to it. Obviously, large amounts of racism in that movement, large amounts of what we would call petty bourgeois elements, small business owners, in other words. So I'm not a big fan of small business owners. I think some of the worst places I've ever worked in my life have been small businesses. And oftentimes the owners of small businesses operate with a sort of authoritarian, sort of dictatorial control over their workplace. And I would venture to guess that a lot of the major abuses that workers face in this country come from small businesses. You know, and to some degree, they aren't regulated in the same way that larger corporations are. So that's a major problem. But yeah, there's a very distinct petty bourgeois character to this riotous, I think Trump called it a calamity. It's a euphemism, right? At the Capitol. And we are going to see more of this. As much as the, you know, you would like to think that the Biden administration is going to crack down, or the FBI is going to crack down. We are going to have sporadic periods of extreme right-wing stochastic terrorism in this country for the conceivable future. And I know this is supposed to be a chill stream, and what I'm saying is very not chill right now, but it is the truth. And part of the reason for that is the major destabilization of this country due to the underlying economic conditions I've mentioned in this stream. So we have this extreme right-wing reactionary movement that has a petty bourgeois character to it, a distinct petty bourgeois character to it. Some have tried to argue that it's a working class movement. I'm highly skeptical of that. It doesn't seem to be, but there might be some contingent of working class people who have been totally duped by Trump's bullshit. You know, I wouldn't be surprised about that, but I would say in large part, the people who can afford to take a day off in the middle of the week, fly to the Capitol, and do what they did, I think these people are in some kind of upper echelon in terms of their affluence. And I know in Illinois we had a lot of small business owners that were identified as part of this riot. So that doesn't surprise me in the least. That was a huge tangent. So, I mean, what I would recommend right now is if we could get a goddamn working class movement in this country to combat, whose goal should be first and foremost to improve their own working conditions and improve their own lives in specific material ways that don't relate to aesthetics or signifiers, don't relate to destroying monuments or whatever kind of symbolic stuff we've seen in prior times. They have to have specific material goals and specific demands. And that should be their primary goal. And a working class movement like this, if the working class is activated, this sort of reactionary, disorganized riot that we saw at the Capitol, you know, a real working class movement would make that look like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade. And it is pretty pathetic what I saw at the Capitol in terms of their disorganization, in terms of their absolute fucking stupidity. These people are naive enough to show their faces. Extremely dumb people. Radnuke's People's Minds. I live near AOC's office, and I saw people protesting because she won't bring Medicare for all to a vote. What do you think about that take? That is sort of related to this whole, I think Jimmy Dore, right, the comedian, is trying to pressure the squad and specifically AOC to quote unquote force the vote on Medicare for all. I don't think it's a bad idea. I don't think it'll work, but I also don't think it's a bad idea, and I think being against it is kind of weird. You know, they could at least try. I don't know. I also heard AOC say, you know, and this was prior to the whole Capitol thing. I heard AOC on Twitter say that, like, people harassing her on Twitter is violence, and that's ridiculous. So I think she's taken a right-wing turn. I think she is kind of, we've seen her kind of signal that she is more liberal than leftist, and that shouldn't really surprise anyone, because electoralism is kind of a formula for that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, this is a tactical disagreement. I don't necessarily think it needs to be ugly. But we do need to keep in mind, people are dying right now. People cannot, the pandemic aside, people were dying prior to that simply because they can't afford healthcare in this country. And I mean, because they can't afford insulin, right? People are dying because they can't afford insulin. So you'll have to excuse me if I don't really give a shit about decorum or civility at a time like this. And I don't really care if a congresswoman or congressman, anyone in Congress, gets shit on Twitter. You need to tell it to someone who cares. I don't care about that. Frankly, it's your job to get harassed, in my opinion. That's what you sign up for when you join Congress. And it's not violence. It's not violence to just simply say to someone, to a congressperson on Twitter, hey, you're doing the wrong thing. You're fucking up. That's not violence. And if we set that precedent now, that's ridiculous. So as far as force the vote goes, like I said, I don't think it has a solid chance of actually working at this time. I think the centrists have really consolidated power in the Democratic Party to such a degree that, like, anyone left of center is just going to get railroaded right now, regardless of what they do. But I also think being against force the vote, it's kind of a Hail Mary, if you ask me. And I'm not necessarily against doing a Hail Mary right now. Newt is asking, do you think the DNC forces a conformity or get out situation on left-leaning reps slash senators. I absolutely think they do. I think there's a lot of pressure from the center on anyone who is progressive. I'm not a huge fan of that term, but anyone who identifies as progressive or left of center, there is enormous pressure to conform to the prevailing neoliberal order. And if you don't do that, you get marginalized. So I understand, like AOC is kind of like she's doing what she perceives as like the most strategically optimal thing she could be doing right now. And I get that. Obviously, like in terms of what I think about her personally, I don't think she's like a bad person. I think we just have ideological disagreements about like what is necessary right now. Christopher says, this is way better than a chill stream. I'm glad you like that. Yeah. I got more viewers when I was on that little rant, so maybe I should keep it up. I don't know. Bubble Boy says, I'd also recommend getting in touch with the IWW, your local chapter, if you've got one. They should be able to help you out. Yeah. I co-sign that statement. What else is going on? Kind of went off there. What is the IWW? The Industrial Workers of the World. They are a radical union for all workers. So I would encourage you to just Google IWW and check out their website. Check out what they have to say. Rad Nukes, People's Minds. Honestly, Medicare for All shouldn't really be seen as a leftist policy. Medicare is necessary for even a functional capitalist society. That's an interesting point. Yeah, a good way of putting it, in my view, would be that like Medicare for All is really the compromise position for leftists. Like, really, I think what we actually need is kind of something along the lines of what the UK has, provided that it is funded appropriately. And guess what? How do we fund something like that? People say, how do we pay for this? How do we pay for that? Take a look at what the United States government spends on the military, and then get back to me. John UP, man, it's a shock knowing people die over insulin. I work in public health in my city, and nobody even knows what it is to pay for insulin or a fucking ambulance. Like, man, this is barbaric. Yeah, it is barbaric. It's unacceptable, and it's hard not to get infuriated on a daily basis about it when you have the Democrats, who are supposedly a working class party. That's a fucking joke, right? their posturing on this issue in terms of their ability to help the working class right now, Democrats are exceedingly impotent. And that's by design. You know, I used to say that the Democrats were highly incompetent and ineffectual in terms of getting their people elected. I think there's some grain of truth there, but I think the larger truth is that, broadly speaking, the people who pull the strings at the DNC and the people who control the Democratic Party are highly competent people. They're just not on your side. That's the sad truth of it. Dan Gonzalez says, what I can't stand about forcing the vote is that people are taking an intellectual disagreement personally. We need to consolidate like the DNC does, or else we will get crushed. I appreciate you sharing your opinion on that. I don't agree with you. Because the issue is, when it comes to healthcare, it can never be only an intellectual disagreement, right? I have a condition that requires me to take medication that costs, without insurance, it costs roughly $5,000 a month. So this will never be an intellectual disagreement. First and foremost for me, it's literally a matter of life or death. So it's, you know, passions get stirred when things are a matter of life or death. I mean, what else could you expect? Now, with respect to your point that like the left needs to consolidate like the DNC does, the issue with that is that our goals are fundamentally different. If you're on the left, I would argue that the goal is fundamentally different than those who are controlling the DNC, because their goal is to keep you from getting power within their institution, and more broadly, to keep a lid on working class demands in this country. And the goal of any coherent working class movement should be the opposite of that, right? So it would make sense to say that the structure of any working class movement probably wouldn't look like the DNC in terms of its structure. It's going to be more broad. It's going to be more of a big tent movement. It's going to be ideologically diverse in terms of, you know, you're going to have all sorts of people. You're going to have the working class, broadly speaking, and all of their beauty and all of their flaws, right? So it's not going to take it's not going to assume the form of something like the DNC. Yeah. Yeah, Kushluk says the U.S. will turn into or already is a degenerate bourgeois state. I don't. I mean, it depends on what you mean by degenerate. Like, that is a term I kind of associate with reactionaries, but I also understand its usage in some circles of Marxist-Leninists. And more broadly speaking, like, um, you know, I don't know what I was going to say there. It seems like a kind of redundant term, actually, because the bourgeois state is inherently something that will combust due to class tensions. So to call it like a degenerate thing is like, well, of course it is. And also, I'm a big fan of Degeneration X. So being a degenerate is a good thing. Got my neon green in the background. Aaron says, never heard an ML say degenerate before. I've heard MLs say all kinds of things, dude. Chromium Man says, I leave for 10 minutes to print some cat photos, and we're talking about degenerates. Yeah, what's up, my fellow degens? Will you do a video on AI builds? Maybe. Let's see where it goes. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what he puts out next. Secret XX Stars. I don't know what the context of this comment was, but so as far as congressional logistics, like we have the majority only by the fact that the vice president will be a Democrat. Most Senate bills need 60 votes. I don't. So you feel like whether what's done, regardless, the outcome will be the same. I don't buy that because you can get rid of the filibuster, and then you don't need 60 votes. You can change the rules in the Senate with a simple majority, as far as I understand, and get rid of the filibuster, which is understood as the nuclear option. So you can get rid of the filibuster, and then all you need is for the Dems to get on the same page about passing a piece of legislation, and you won't need Republican cooperation on anything. You can just ram everything through. They're not going to do that, though. Bubble Boy says, I think that degenerate state is more of a Trotskyist thing, though my knowledge of Trotsky is basically ice pick, dude. Yeah. Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it's like a maybe it's like an ultra leftist thing. I'm not sure. Yeah, because I've heard the Soviet Union described as a degenerative workers' state. I've heard that term before. It's probably a spicy take. Bubble Boy says, Democrats will find a compromise alone in an empty room. That's right. Even in their wildest fantasies, like on The West Wing, the television show, in their wildest fantasies, they are compromising because they are pathological in terms of their political ideology. It is built in that they are sort of like reasonable people who will negotiate and compromise. And so, yeah, once they enter a room, they've already compromised. And so you can get so many concessions out of Democrats because they don't really the purpose of their party is really not to take a hard line on things that would benefit the working class. Dan Gonzalez, yeah, they can scrap the filibuster, but Dems are conservatives who would rather silence discourse in the name of bipartisanship, i.e. submission. That's right. That's exactly right. I gotta go to the bathroom really quick. Be right back. Get some more water. Per usual, I got my couch potato here. That's for the lumbar support. Feeling a little bit loopy today. I think so I cooked a steak on my cast iron skillet last night and had a nice prime rib. But I woke up at 5 in the morning and let's just say I had the rumblies. I had a bit of the rumblies. So I had some trouble sleeping, and to make a long story short, I eventually got back to sleep. So I think I got my 8 hours in, but let's just say there was a bit of an interruption there. Rad nukes people's minds. I honestly wonder if it's possible to have a tumor in right-wing takes. I don't know what you mean by that. Even McCain stopped the repeal of the ACA after he got brain cancer. And yes, in the words of Alex Jones, now he is burning in hell. Funniest shit ever. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Alex Jones had a comment on, what did he say? His daughter, McCain's daughter on The View said that the people at Capitol Hill, or the people at the Capitol, she had no problem with them being sent to Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay, being treated like terrorists, which, under present U.S. law, it is actually extremely difficult to charge an American citizen with domestic terrorism. That's my understanding, at least. I'm not a lawyer, but it would be extremely difficult to send these people to Gitmo, and I would say inadvisable. But she's, of course, McCain's daughter's not a huge fan of Trump, and she is posturing to seem like she's tough. I kind of get that. But Alex Jones showed that clip on his show, and then he said that her father was burning in hell, which I thought was funny. That is obviously I don't identify with someone like with someone like Jones, but he says funny stuff occasionally. Nighttime Master Chef. That's I can cook a good steak. That's about it in terms of my cooking abilities. I can cook a good steak. Dan Gonzalez says, I think we're past late-stage capitalism. Would it be fair to call this age late-stage humanity? That's pretty grim, man. We are still the underlying dynamics of the economy are still fundamentally capitalist. So I think it's fair to say this is late capitalism or late stage capitalism. Increasingly, we are seeing a kind of shift to more rent models. I've heard some interesting discussions on that with C. Derek Varn. He was talking about that in a recent live stream, that there's an increasing and concerted shift to sort of rentier models. But if you understand like this sort of economics 101 behind this, you can't sustain an economy. You can't sustain a capitalist economy with a sector that is with like a dominant economic sector of rentier capital. It doesn't work because rent-seeking behaviors is a drain on the economy. You're not going to get an increase in productivity if rent-seeking behavior is incentivized to such a degree that it is sort of like the dominant mode of the economy. Then you have something like feudalism, because feudalism was the economic basis of feudalism was rent-seeking, right? So maybe the ultra-reactionaries are correct, and we are seeing a sort of a shift away from capitalism into some kind of like neo-feudalism, the way Elon Musk talks about workers, that really wouldn't surprise me at this point. The difference between me and an ultra reactionary who says something like that is they think that's a good thing, which is perverse. Yeah, I think Elon Musk, he has these grand schemes to go to Mars, and at some point he was asked about the affordability issue. Like, most people can't afford to travel to Mars, right? Because it would be, saying it would be prohibitively expensive would be an understatement, right? And his response was, well, they can take out loans and then they can work off their loans because there will be jobs available on Mars. So Elon Musk is basically in favor of indentured servitude. What's the difference between what he said and indentured servitude? Yeah. Bubble Boy says, Elon Musk legit starting the plot of The Outer Worlds. Yeah, pretty much, right? Ignacio says, what do you think of H.P. Lovecraft? Is there stuff to learn from his work? And should we consume critically, or do you think we should just stop reading him and find someone else? Well, no, I wouldn't. I'm an advocate of reading in general, and that includes reading works that are maybe written by people in the enemy camp, in terms of reading things by right-wing people. I think in order to understand their worldview, I would strongly recommend that. And that's really when it comes to political theory. When it comes to Lovecraft, yeah, I mean, he was a virulent racist for much of his life. I think he had fascist sympathies at various points. There is some evidence to suggest that he had a change of heart towards the end of his life. In terms of how that affects whether or not we should read his work is kind of, I mean, well, first off, the man is dead, so we don't have to worry about supporting a problematic person, right? He's dead. And second off, I think there is merit to Lovecraft's work, aside from, all of the horrible things he supported during his lifetime. And I think there is an interesting connection there between some certain themes in his work and certain reactionary tendencies that he had. So, yeah, long story short, you should read everything critically. And that includes people you identify with politically and people you don't identify with. You should read everything critically, including people like Lovecraft. Yeah, Tarkovsky Noir. Lovecraft turned into a socialist by the end of his life. Just found out recently. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about in terms of he had a change of heart towards the latter parts of his life, and of course that should be taken into account. It doesn't excuse anything he supported during his life, but it's interesting. Reading the libertarian subreddit has opened my eyes to how fucked this country is. That's Rad Nukes People's Minds. Yeah. Libertarianism, right-wing libertarianism, is a hell of a drug. I will say that. Sean Reed says, I vehemently despise Lovecraft's writing, but my dislike of him is a little petty, I think. Well, I would be... I would want to know specifically why you don't like his writing. Like, what's your issue with his... Is it his style? Something about his style? I mean, that's fine. Everyone has their own artistic sensibilities. Dan Gonzalez says, Elon just needs to wait a few decades. We're turning Earth into Mars. I think we're actually turning Earth into Venus in terms of the runaway greenhouse effects. I think our future is more along the lines of a planet like Venus, to be scientifically accurate. Tarkovsky Noir. I honestly think his horrid politics, we're talking about Lovecraft again, also had to do with him being traumatized by his family. Yeah, trigger warning here for sexual abuse. So apparently Lovecraft was traumatized sexually by his family and essentially locked up in his room as they Munchausened him to have some obscure nerve issue. Now, if you don't know what Munchausen, so this would be Munchausen by proxy, actually, right? So Munchausen syndrome is when you sort of contrive an illness or a number of illnesses in your mind in order to get attention. And it is, my understanding is it's like a deeply pathological issue. So, and then Munchausen by proxy would be when you sort of project that onto a loved one. So you would say, let's say a mother who has Munchausen's by proxy, they would say, oh, my boy has, he has all these weird symptoms, and she would take him to the doctor constantly in order to sort of have this kind of like parasitically sort of feed off of the attention that their son gets from having all these imagined symptoms. So it's a really sick. Someone with Munchausen's and someone with Munchausen's by proxy is a really sick person. and they can cause a lot of harm. So I wasn't aware of that. Maybe I need to like read a Lovecraft. Maybe I need to read more about his background, because I wasn't aware of that. But it might explain a few things about him. Yeah. Krell says, a friend's mother I knew had Munchausen's, and kept my friend in the hospital and was caught trying to smother him for attention. That is horrific. What is that? There's a movie on I think it was on Hulu, about someone with Munchausen's by proxy. It's like a horror movie, or like I guess like maybe like a thriller. Yeah, honey? Kayla.
What?
What's that movie called with the woman who has Munchausen's by proxy? We watched it a few weeks ago. I don't know. It's on Hulu. Neither of us.
Or something?
What?
Bad?
Is it just called Bad?
No, it's like Run.
Run. Okay.
With Sarah Paulson, right? Is that her?
Sarah Paulson.
Yeah.
Right.
Is that right?
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Meek HH. Do you ever get stuck writing music? How do you get through it? I make a lot of experimental music for catharsis, but sometimes gets hard pushing through, not feeling self-conscious and silly. Yeah. That is a problem. I don't have any specific advice for you other than you really can't judge something as you're doing it. You can only judge it upon reflection. Because like being self-conscious is really a creativity killer. So what I would suggest is, if you are creating music, try to have fun. Try to make things that you think sound good, but don't try to judge it as you're in the middle of that process, because you're gonna have a bad time. And yeah, I get stuck all the time. I think it's just a hazard of doing that type of activity. So what else is going on? I changed my name to Ariel Stink on Twitter. It's a bit of being a bit of a smartass. I hope you appreciate that. If you're not aware, there's a indie musician by the name of Ariel Pink who was I guess outed as a Trumpster because he attended the riot at the Capitol. Maybe it is. I've been going back and forth. Maybe it is better to say insurrection, but I don't know. But apparently he was in D.C. when this whole thing at the Capitol happened, and he's kind of a dingus. He went on Tucker Carlson to try to say he's getting canceled. Very comical figure, if you ask me. Ariel Pink's music is great, even though he's a huge goober. That's Krell. Yeah, I don't know. I could never get into him personally. And I'm not saying that. I'm not just saying that because he's like apparently a right winger or whatever. I could never get into his music. It just never appealed to me. So. Bubble Boy, I've taken to calling it insurrectionary cope. Imagining MAGAs trying to get into Ariel Pink is really funny. Yes, it is. Extremely funny. Imagining like your average Trump supporter listening to Ariel Pink and then them just being like, why does it sound like it's in a radio in the other room? You know? Just not understanding the whole vibe. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, this video is kind of
I do think that anti-capitalist sentiment is inherently anti-vegan. A couple months ago, I did a Q&A, and one of the questions was about my political ideology, and I was asked if I considered myself neoliberal, and I said, yeah, I would consider myself neoliberal. And then I kind of gave a little bit more detail, expanded.
Anyone who self-identifies as a neoliberal, that is a major red flag, in my view. So the title of this video is Anti-Capitalism is Anti-Vegan. Now, I've had periods of my life where I have dabbled, not quite with veganism, but I have at the very least tried to cut down on my meat consumption. I have no problem with vegans. I know vegans. And support them in their choices, obviously. And I think you can live a healthy life as a vegan. I think it's totally doable. You just have to be conscientious of what you're eating. Now, this YouTuber is claiming that anti-capitalism is anti-vegan. That's quite interesting. Tyler Graham, at least she's honest. Most neoliberals will not admit to being neoliberal. That's true, but I think we'll see. I don't want to poison the well here. Let's watch the video.
On that a bit in a follow-up Q&A because the comments on the first one, people were kind of mad at me. It ranged from people confusing neoliberalism and libertarianism, they're not the same thing, to kind of like you're dead to me type comments for not opposing capitalism, even equating it to fascism, even saying that it was inconsistent with veganism.
Footnote. So being pro-capitalist doesn't automatically mean you are a fascist. But what it does mean, in my view, is that you support a system that, given a long enough time period, will lead to fascism. Because fascism is a reaction to crises that occur within capitalism, within societies in which capitalism is the prevailing mode of production. One might say that fascism is a sort of petty bourgeois counter-revolution that occurs in times of economic crisis within capitalism. Its class character is fundamentally like petty bourgeois, small business owner. And usually they have some kind of alliance with with big capital. That might not occur in the early stages of their movement, but they increasingly get support, or people are complicit. Anyway, yeah, claiming that you are pro-capitalist does not mean you are a fascist. So I will give her that. But capitalism leads to fascism. So if you are pro-capitalist, you are complicit in that.
So I wanted to address it, the kind of extreme anti-capitalist sentiment and how that relates to veganism. Shouldn't be controversial. For those who don't know, neoliberal is like your typical left-leaning social progressive, but also being generally pro-free market with few restrictions on...
Hold up. Hold the phone. She doesn't know what neoliberalism is. She doesn't know the first thing about it. So it is inaccurate to say that neoliberalism is generally socially progressive. Neoliberalism emerged as a sort of... See, it's complicated, but neoliberalism is strongly associated with figures like Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, who are very much not social progressives. So right off the bat, she's already kind of indicating to me that she doesn't know what she's talking about. And that's unfortunate.
On a lot of industries like housing, but also very pro-welfare state, as libertarians would say. Neoliberals want a substantial safety net.
That's wrong. That's totally wrong. If you espouse neoliberal policies, what that typically means is that you are in favor of the quote-unquote free market solutions to social problems, which would mean you're not in favor of the state intervening in the lives of poor people in order to support them. You would be in favor of market solutions to that problem. So that is a constitutive part of neoliberalism, is being in favor of free markets. And being pro-welfare state is anti-free market. So, yeah. Yikes.
It's often even supporting public options, like healthcare, for instance. Not all neoliberals do. Of course, there's going to be disagreement when the private options aren't serving the public. Conservatives often accuse neoliberals of being socialist because they accuse everyone of being socialist, advocating for higher taxation, welfare. But ultimately, the wealth in society that funds that welfare is generated by capitalist mechanisms. Same is the case in, what people call European socialism, which isn't really socialism by definition. Still relies on profit motive, still has private ownership, even if a few select industries are publicly owned. Since socialism is commonly defined as like a transitional state to communism, communism being the goal, I'm going to focus on communism here. So why are neoliberals generally pro-free market and anti?
How could you be this wrong? How can you make a video and make these kinds of claims so confidently? Ignacio, neoliberalism is social democracy now, I guess, right? So she's talking, when she says quote unquote European socialism or social democracy, what that means is, social democrats basically, they're not fans of capitalism, but they tolerate it. And they advocate for a robust welfare state. They advocate for workers to have very robust protections. This is all antithetical to someone we would typically associate with neoliberal policies. Now, there is a bit of nuance here, because it is unfortunately the case that certain quote-unquote social democratic governments in Europe have in recent years succumbed to the prevailing neoliberal order in certain ways. But that's, but she is just straight up making the equivalence here between social democracy and neoliberalism, and those two things are very different things. She's trying to, I genuinely can't tell if she just doesn't know what she's talking about, or if she's trying to sort of redefine the word neoliberalism in a sort of bad faith manner.
Anti-communism is the question I want to answer. Philosophy is essential when it comes to ethics, but you can't just think really hard to figure out empirical facts, right? Like when it comes to economics and economic policies, and which actually work in practice, which result in a functioning system that promotes a GDP that's conducive to human well-being. You can think up an ethical system in which it is wrong for one person to ever profit off the work of another person. You can call that exploitation, but in order to put that into practice, you have to just not care about the consequences at all. You would have to ignore all of the times communism has been tried and all of the times it has failed, which is every single time.
Okay, so she just straight up making right-wing talking points now. And that's not to say that every experiment that has gone under the header of quote-unquote communism has been successful or has been something I would condone or support. But it does give you some indication. She is just trying to completely put all of these different governments in the same category and say they're failures. I would encourage someone who thinks this line of argumentation is compelling. I would encourage them to look at Cuba's literacy program. Encourage them to look at the gains Cuba has had in terms of their health care. Specifically maternal mortality rates and maternal infant mortality on par with, I believe it's on par with the industrialized world, despite the fact that Cuba has been economically isolated, right, for much of their existence, which, by the way, is an interesting posture for people who claim to be in favor of free markets to have some kind of embargo. Seems kind of hypocritical to me. But anyway. What the fuck does this have to do with veganism? Oh, God. Okay. This is a whole thing here.
It's been tried. It has failed. It has caused immeasurable suffering and death. I'm a consequentialist. I care about consequences in terms of suffering. Most people care more about having a job, helping their family, than they do about some abstract principle that says it's wrong for their bosses to make a profit off of their labor. And I care more about what people want than I do deciding.
The Marxist argument, which she is in a backhanded sort of way addressing here, is not that economic exploitation is morally wrong, strictly speaking, but rather Marx would argue that this dynamic does not live up to the principles that liberalism supposedly espouses. Egalite, fraternite, liberté. You know, like, basically Marx is just arguing that things that liberals supposedly believe in cannot be, are not reflected in societies where the capitalist mode of production is dominant. So it's not, strictly speaking, a moral argument, first and foremost. You know, and I'm sure if you ask most Marxists, they would say that economic exploitation is morally wrong. But that's not, first and foremost, what the Marxist position is. The position is that if you have an economy that is built around this kind of activity, it's going to basically lead to its own undoing in some regard.
What people want for them, or what I think is better for them based on some sort of cosmic justice. Injustice in and of itself is not harm. It's only harm when the consequences of injustice actually harm people or sentient beings. And that harm can range from material harm, disease, lead in your water being shot, to immaterial harm like damaged self-esteem. There may be some level of inevitable harm there when we're talking about capitalism. I'm sure there is. But that only matters if there is an alternative that is better, that if the harm that capitalism causes is worse than some sort of evidence-based alternative. But there is no evidence-based alternative. Or there is one, but the evidence goes in the opposite direction. Talking about ending capitalism because of the inevitable harms without some solution, without something that actually works better, is like talking about ending food because food on some level is inevitably harmful. True.
It's a specious argument from someone who is obsessed with rationality over the well-being of everyday people, because as far as I'm concerned, the society as a whole produces enough food to feed everyone. We don't do it. Why don't we do it? Because it's not profitable. Society is capable of producing enough shelter to make sure everyone has adequate housing. Why don't we do it? Why don't we do it? Chat? Why are there homeless people? Because it's not profitable to ensure basic housing for everyone. It's not profitable. These are problems that are inherent to capitalism.
True, but, maybe dying is worse. Regulated capitalism with a strong safety net is the best system we have based on the systems we actually...
Regulated capitalism with a strong safety net is not something that someone who is an advocate of neoliberalism would espouse. So she is fundamentally confused about the term she's using. It sounds like she's just a regular old, maybe like semi-progressive liberal. But she, like, when you get into neoliberalism, there are just certain things that there are certain lines you won't cross. For instance, you're not going to be in favor of robust welfare. You're going to be more in favor of means testing, and that is to say, if you're even in favor of welfare at all, it's going to be means tested, which provides a bunch of hurdles that the working class has to jump through in order to get the money that they very much need. Yeah, Tyler Graham says she's a socialdem liberal, maybe. Yeah, I think it does kind of sound like she's just confused here. All you have to do is search neoliberalism on Wikipedia, and this stuff is readily available. This is pretty basic. I'm going to get some more water. Kushluck, I've read 5 pages of theory, asked no questions about parts I didn't understand, then made a video. It doesn't even sound like she did that. Because if she did, she wouldn't be making this categorical error with respect to neoliberalism. My mic is scratchy. My mic is scratchy. Certain quote-unquote social democratic governments in Europe, see what you're talking about here, in recent years succumbed to the prevailing neoliberal order. Let's see why that is. Sorry about that. So I kind of turned it down. I turned the mic down, but I'm going to try to talk louder. So hopefully that's not too much of a problem in certain ways. Let's see. So I kind of turned it down. I turned the mic down, but I'm going to try to talk louder. Yeah, it's cutting in and out. So hopefully that's really, really annoying. Sorry about that. No, it bothers me too. Is this any better? It's not. Is this any better? No, it's still doing it. That's annoying. Sorry about that. Not sure what the problem is. I'll have to look into that. Maybe my mic is finally taking a shit on me. I've had this mic for a really long time. So, yeah. That could be an issue. Let me try one more thing. I'm gonna try this guy. How's this sound? Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Sound any better? How's this sound? It's quiet. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Sound any better? How's this sound? It's quiet. Okay, it should be louder now. Very quiet. Very quiet. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's not scratchy, but it's quiet. Sound any better? How's this sound? It's quiet. Okay, it should be louder now. Very quiet. Very quiet. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's not scratchy, but it's quiet. It is still scratchy. Oh, that's really annoying. I'm going to have to look into that. Doesn't seem to be a microphone issue. It might be an issue with my interface. In which case, there might not be much I can do about it right now. Now is good. Okay. You know, I think I've said all I've had to say about the unnatural vegan. She's gonna start getting into the vegan stuff, which I'm not really interested in her argument at this point. Because she's already demonstrated she either doesn't know what she's talking about, or she is intentionally trying to, like, making a bad faith effort to redefine the term neoliberalism. So that's unfortunate. It is. She did a no growth Bubble Boy says, has she just done the thing where she's heard the term neoliberalism and thought, oh, like, yeah, like new liberals, like liberal versus conservative? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Simple Google search would have remedied that problem. Tarantino thinks he's sexy in these pics. He is not. Oh, yeah. He is a weird looking dude. Appreciate that. Oh, God. Gab.com just making fascist memes. Got a light. I don't know if anyone has any suggestions for what I should talk about or what I should cover right now. I'm all ears. I'm just kind of doom scrolling at the moment. Getting kind of hot in here. I don't have very much control over my the temperature in this apartment. Either it's unbearably warm or it's freezing, basically. Sadiq, your biggest musical influences. Put me on the spot. I can't think of. Let's see. I've been listening. I mean, all right. Like biggest musical influences of all time. I don't know about that one. I really like the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson. As far as what I've been listening to recently, it's been more along the lines of like I've been really digging the Pale Waves' new stuff. Although there is like this infinite regression into nostalgia that I think is getting a bit tiresome, but I enjoy their music very much. I enjoy the Pale Waves. I've been listening to a lot of Russian doomer music, not because I am a doomer, but because I enjoy that. I enjoy that general arrangement, the sort of lo-fi, basic arrangement. And I guess the reason the Russian doomer music is kind of appealing to me is it's really nice to have on while I'm working, because for some reason, like when someone is singing, usually that distracts me. But if they're singing in another language, then yeah, it doesn't for some reason. For some reason, I'm able to focus better. Maybe it's because like my mind isn't trying to identify what that person is saying. Rachel Plummer says, I came from your
video on hiding in my home. I'd love to hear you talk more about narcissism and collective performances. I don't know. That was just something. That was just a very interesting observation. It was a very interesting observation that I gleamed from The Culture of Narcissism by Christopher Lasch, which was written in 1979. But he has some fairly prescient things to say, many of which are like all the more relevant today than they were in his time. So, yeah, Culture of Narcissism by Christopher Lasch is a book I would recommend if you're looking for some like interesting social criticism that, I mean, in my view, very much applies in 2021. If anything, a lot of the trends he is talking about have accelerated. Secret XX Stars. I watched a video from someone else about hiding in my home, and they had a pretty straightforward interpretation of believing what we're seeing. Exactly, which made it seem kind of boring. Yeah, well, I haven't watched any other videos about hiding in my home, but I do think there's a central tension in that work, and a lot of it hinges on. I think, in other words, I think you're supposed to not trust either party. I don't think you're supposed to trust neither Hollis nor Anthony. I think you're supposed to be skeptical of both of them, and I think that's kind of the point. Now, I could be wrong in terms of where the direction of the series is headed, but that's kind of my basic take as of right now. Well, yeah. Thank you, Secret XX Stars. Yeah, and I hope more people check out the series. I think it's kind of it's one of the more interesting projects I've seen lately. So, what should I do here? Should I try to play Cyberpunk? I have a feeling it's gonna crash on me because I mean, the game was relatively stable when I was playing it. I played through basically the entire game. But now, every time I turn it on, it crashes. So that's kind of bullshit. But maybe let's give it a shot, see how it goes. 1 second. And I'm kind of half expecting the game to crash. I kind of want to demonstrate how fucked up this game is just to my stream. So we'll see how it goes.
Good morning, Night City! Yesterday's body count lottery rounded out to a solid and sturdy 30. 10 out of Haywood. Thanks to
Hasn't
an
crashed yet,
gang
so that's good.
wars. One officer down, so I guess you're all screwed. Cause the NCPD will not let that go. Got another blackout in Santo Domingo. Net runners are at it again, poking holes in the power grid. While over in Westbrook, trauma teams scraping cyber psycho victims off the pavement. And in Pacifica, well, Pacifica is still Pacifica. This has been your man, Stan. Join me for another day in our city of dreams.
Hello. I'm Arif Iqbal, and you're watching WNS News. New details have emerged on the attempted abduction of Hanako Arasaka at the Arasaka-sponsored Dashi Parade.
You know how the audio is.
First reported that the
It's
assailants
too loud,
struck
too
as
quiet.
The parade was in full swing.
I'm just gonna fuck around. Try and do a job. A lot of these missions are broken, as far as I can tell. I'm just gonna mess around. Oh! It crashed. Well, so much for that. I've been having some spotty luck with that. Oh well. It is what it is. Sorry, folks. Maybe it'll maybe they'll patch it and it'll be there'll be a more stable build. I don't know. It's kind of frustrating though. I mean, obviously. What are you gonna do? Should have known better to try and do that on stream. Yeah, our commitment to quality, the recent statement they put out. Wow. Primarily my concern with CD Projekt Red is the working conditions. Oh man, this drama between this intra left drama between Zero Books guy and Cuck Philosophy is pretty. I'm not normally into drama, but this is pretty funny. The guy from Cuck Philosophy says, someone directed me to a recent Cumtown episode where Doug Lane from Zero Books, for no reason, shits on me and accuses me of ripping off his channel, which is bizarre because his videos were not even an influence on me. I aspired to make vids that aren't mind-numbingly boring. Boom. Oh. Ruthless. What is the drama about? Yeah, so I think the origin of the drama is Doug Lane, who's the editor of, he's like the managing editor of a publisher called Zero Books, which has put out some transcendent books. In particular, Capitalist Realism by Mark Fisher. One of my favorite books of all time, hands down. A quick read, by the way. So I, no shade to the publication of Zero Books, no shade. But I don't know. I think Doug's kind of a. I watched a few live streams with him. He's kind of a. Maybe maybe we can just kind of chalk this up to him being kind of awkward in social situations. But he went on a podcast called Cumtown, which is a comedy podcast. So I should preface this this whole story with that. It's a comedy podcast, so maybe you shouldn't take things so seriously if they're stated on a comedy podcast. But I haven't listened to Cumtown. The episode with Doug Lane is the only one I've listened to, so I couldn't really comment on them. But yeah, I don't know. I guess Doug went on their podcast and said that that Cuck Philosophy is like his arch nemesis, and that basically he hates this guy, and he makes videos like a Marxist analysis of Shrek or whatever, and basically does the same thing that Doug does on his YouTube channel for Zero Books. Does kind of like Marxist analysis of kind of various aspects of pop culture. I think that would be fair to say. So Doug was just commenting on the fact that like Cuck Philosophy does a very similar thing to what Doug Lane has set out to do with the Zero Books YouTube channel, but he is way more popular or way more successful just in terms of the number of subscribers. I think Cuck Philosophy has like a solid, maybe almost 200,000 subscribers at this point. And I think Zero Books has like more along the lines of like my channel in terms of its success. And I don't know. I kind of perceived it as like, I perceived it as maybe this is a generational thing. Because, I have members of my family who are kind of Gen X, and everything is kind of like layered in, everything's kind of coated in like 7 layers of irony. So I didn't really take Doug seriously when he said that he hated Cuck Philosophy. I kind of just perceived it as like, he's kind of like overtly jealous of how successful cuck philosophy is, which is kind of like, you know, it would be one thing if you were trying to hide that, then it would be perceived as kind of petty, but he just openly said it. He just openly stated, like, yeah, this guy is like way more successful than me. I hate him, you know? That's kind of like a very, I don't know, it perceives me, I perceive it as like a kind of Gen X thing. Like, I hate this guy. He's so successful. He's more successful than me, but it's not really serious. He doesn't really seriously hate him. That's how I perceived it, but I can, maybe if the shoe was on the other foot, I would have been pissed as well. I don't know. But I hope they kiss and make up. Zero Books was originally started by Fisher and someone else, but they later went on to open Repeater. Yes, and I believe the guy from Cuck Philosophy is publishing a book with Repeater. So maybe that's, I don't know, maybe there are some hard feelings there, but it's the most obscure leftist intra-leftist tension that I've seen on my feed. And I'm kind of amused by it. Cuck Philosophy says, I've always respected Lane and obviously like a lot of the books he's published, but he must have dementia at this point. He says I'm a quote-unquote dick with a, quote, long Rasputin beard, but I don't even have a beard and have never talked to him or interacted with him in any way. This is funny. But anyway, I'm losing people with my obscure leftist feuds that I have a sort of morbid curiosity, morbid interest in. Bubble Boy says, can't stand all this publishing house beef in the online left. It's tearing us apart. Same. Things heating up in the Marxist analysis fandom. Yeah. Red Scare 2. This time it's personal. This wouldn't be the Red Scare. This is friendly fire. Guys, Carl wouldn't want this. That's right. Really what it is, I mean, ultimately, if you think about it, it's a product of like it's a product of the fact that people are forced to compete instead of cooperate with one another under capitalism, right? Because, you know, if you're hosting a YouTube channel like I am, you are in competition with other people on the platform, and there's really no way around it. It's just kind of the situation we're forced into. Of course, how you behave in response to that dynamic is something that is within your control. Ignacio says, I've watched more than a few Zero Books videos, and I never really take anything away from them. Maybe it's my poor attention span. I think some of his videos are a bit more heady. His very specific style. And if it's not to your liking, you're going to have a hard time. You're going to have a hard time sort of maintaining your attention. I think that's fair to say. I mean, the same thing is true of Cuck Philosophy as well. So, you know, they're similar in that regard. Sorry, I just hopped in halfway through the paragraph. You think capitalism is inherent to competition. Well, no, I think this particular form of capitalism, that is to say neoliberal capitalism, essentially entails competition. It doesn't necessarily need to be that way. Kushluk says, I always feel like he is substantial but difficult. Seems to be true of the man himself. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I really enjoy Pop the Left, which is Doug Lane's podcast with C. Derek Varn. And I also really enjoy C. Derek Varn's podcast on the Emancipation Network. He's got Mortal Science, which which is hosted by Esri, who is also the host of one of the co-hosts of Swampside Chats, which I also enjoy. Esri and C. Derek Varn, Mortal Science. I have been really enjoying this podcast as of late. Would highly recommend if you are a leftist nerd like me. Do I watch anime? Yes. In fact, just watched a movie called Paprika last night. I believe the director is Kojima, right? Guy from Perfect Blue. Let me check that so I'm not talking out of my ass. Oh, no, sorry. Duh. Satoshi Kon. The director of Perfect Blue and Paranoia Agent is another one I liked. I actually covered Paranoia Agent on my channel. So if you are check out my Paranoia Agent analysis if you are interested in anime. Kushluk, I'm subscribed to Zero Books, but not Cuck Philosophy. I think you should check out Cuck Philosophy. I think he does some good videos, and he had this great collaboration called Marx Was Not a Statist. I like that video. It was a collaboration with Anarcho-Pack and somebody else. I don't want to leave them out. It's this video. Red Plateaus. Oh no, maybe this didn't have a Narco-Pack. It was looks like it was Red Plateaus and Exizi. This Exizi, who's fairly divisive on the left. Some would call him an infantile ultra-leftist. Would you recommend Paprika? Looks cool. Yeah. My feelings are mixed. Okay? So it is a really trippy film. So if you are looking for something along those lines, I would say go for it. It is very much in the milieu of Satoshi Kon in terms of if you like Perfect Blue, and if you liked Paranoia Agent, which is another one I've seen, I think you'll probably like Paprika. There's a few minor issues I have with it. One of the main characters is a large person, and they play that up a lot in terms of sight gags, and I think that's pretty. I think that got old really quick. Although, in fairness, the character also seems to have some depth about them. So that is a. I'll give them credit for that. But yeah, not a huge fan of the sight gags, making fun of fat people. It got old. Ain't that just the way? Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. Let's do the thought eliminating cliche. What else is going on? I might cut out here. I've been streaming for a few hours, and the voice is getting. Don't want to overdo it with my voice. Yeah. So, yeah, I think I might have got a few things in the works right now. Nothing imminently coming out, but stay tuned. And of course, if you want to support me on a monthly basis, you can do so at patreon.com/Nightmare Masterclass. You can also give me a one-time donation at Ko-fi.com/Nightmare Masterclass. Links in the description. And thank you for joining me. I'm going to try to do this sort of thing a little bit more frequently because I do enjoy it. Yeah, so maybe you'll be seeing more of me. Anyway, have a good one.